Well, hi. You look exactly the same, just as I left you. So this is officially, I'm calling it season 4. Season 3 was short. We always knew that about season 3, didn't we? So season 3 to be short. Anyway, let's call this season 4. And a thing to know about season 4 is I am opening it up. The I Want to Hold Your Band metasphere. Is that a word? What's the metaverse? Metaverse. Clearly, I'm not a big Marvel guy, and that's my secret. Don't tell anyone. Isn't it metaverse? Or is it Marvel? I've got the hiccups. Or is it Marvelverse? Metaverse? I don't fucking know. Oh, Jesus, there's a hiccup. Okay, if you're tracking at home, I've said Jesus and fuck. That's my mom who is tracking that, probably. Anyway, I decided to open it up to virtual interviews because I wanted to talk to more people in more places across the nation, across the world, and this enabled me to do that. So I'll still do in-person stuff, but we'll also do virtual interviews, and it sounds pretty much like they're here still. If you see the video on Instagram, though, you can tell that they're not. Anyway, I kicked off the aforementioned season 4 in the best way with the incredible singer-songwriter Dar Williams. Been a big fan of her since the early 2000s. She is a national treasure. I encourage you to go look up some of her music. Mortal City, great album. Beauty of the Rain, great album. Anyway, we talked Judy Collins, Simon and Garfunkel, Suzanne Vega, Patrick Hernandez, the Bee Gees, the magical charms of Mr. Rick Springfield, and so much more. Don't forget all the songs we talk about, I give links to in the episode description, so you can click them and vibe along with us. And if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe. So, without further ado, I give you Dar Williams. The first piece of music, album, artist that came into your life?
My parents had an alphabetical. They had a bunch of 45s that we would listen to, and we would have dance parties with our neighbors where we would dance and then we would run over and change the 45. And that was a lot of just pop music from the late 50s, early 60s, Hooked on a Feeling, and just whatever, Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, all that stuff. That was on our 45s. But they had this alphabetized, mostly folk rock collection, and we just listened to all of like the B's and C's and D's. So the Byrds, I really love the Byrds, the harmonies, and the Pete Seeger songs with harmony in them. Like that was so kid-friendly and also had these great messages. So, but also Judy Collins and Joan Baez and all of those, Crosby, Stills and Nash, they were all there too. There was also the Mamas and the Papas over at M, and Simon and Garfunkel were in heavy rotation. We had this black and white TV, and on one side was the alphabetized non-classical, and the other side was the alphabetized classical, which my dad would listen to. So that was kind of the house.
When you were younger, who did you think of more of those records? Did you think your dad's were the classical records and the left was your mom's?
No, my mom, it came out later that my mom was like a real Broadway tunes person. She was doing a painting job down in, like, when I came home from school once, and I heard her like sort of belting along with Kiss Me Kate. I hadn't known. My mom was like a closet Broadway freak. So
really?
So that was more her world. So she went along with whatever we were listening to.
And it was all records. Do you remember? Was it like in the living room, where you played it?
Yeah, I think it's funny. My I think when I was 8 years old, my great grandmother passed away, and I think she left something for my parents. And so I remember we got a new rug. I remember like dancing on a Persian rug instead of just the straight tan one. Like I remember we got like a little glow up that I thought, helped the whole dancing situation.
Did you have any, like a record player or something in your room that you would listen to, or would it all be music downstairs?
All music downstairs. I mean, we had our tape recorders up in our rooms.
Yes.
So I had that. But, I've always been an insomniac, and we did have those Broadway records. So when my parents were asleep, I would actually turn on the Broadway records and choreograph musical comedy numbers.
Wait a
That was
second.
one of my secret thing. In the dark, I would choreograph Broadway
You
things.
would choreograph actual numbers with
Like my favorite was like to life l'chaim. Like that was so awesome. So
Fiddler on the Roof,
that's
yeah.
and Broadway is so melodic, and so the songs are have so many characters and are so character driven. I think that actually really influenced my writing a lot.
Did you have cassettes? Because we're of the similar generation, and cassettes was big for me. I mean, there was my parents' records, but then, cassettes. I miss that physical media aspect is so gratifying. And I think about cassettes, and I've talked with people. There was that the sound of it when you put it in the...
Yeah, even the effort it took to like press those buttons, the human was definitely involved with all of that. And I think the way people gathered, I mean, even CDs, I did a 20th anniversary of my second album, which is called Mortal City. And it seemed like because it was almost like a little mini campfire. Like people were able to sort of put it into a machine and play it on their halls. It wasn't like a Spotify mix where you just hear one song and then another and you're not even sure who it's by. They would sort of commune around the disc itself, like it was new and had been talked about in the paper. So that tangible thing also affected how people listened to music in groups. And it was such a sociological, a unique moment for me to see I could tell the different ways people had listened to my music.
Do you remember the first piece of music that you bought for yourself? And was it a cassette or was it a record?
I think Tea for the Tillerman was the first album I bought. I might have bought 45s because that was the kind of thing you could afford. And I'm not remembering which 70s song, which would be so awesome because I'm sure it was by one of those fantastic one-hit wonders. But, we would go to Caldor's and, while my mom was off buying our shampoo, we would buy 45s. And I'm sorry, I don't remember. Or maybe I would make my sisters buy them. But I remember Tea for the Tillerman being a really big deal.
Caldor's, I don't know. Was this where did you grow up?
I grew up in actually Chappaqua, New York, which is where it wasn't a fancy town when we were living there. Caldor's was the Kmart of its day. We had a record store next to the deli in our town, and it was right near the middle school, and I was 11 or 12, and I remember going in and seeing Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones and going ew. Who's that? And of course we had the 45 of Ruby Tuesday, but I didn't know. We're going, no, I don't think so. But that incredible relationship you could have with an LP.
Wasn't Sticky Fingers, didn't it have that picture with just his pants with the bold, yes. You talked about how the musical theater with your mom influenced you. Any siblings or friends that had music that they played or passed on to you that influenced you?
Well, there's this great divide between what's on the radio that influences you. So there's all that disco and the top 40 stuff and, listening to Casey Kasem's top 40, with your ear to the radio. And Donna Summer, who really was a great writer and interpreter and everything. So there was all that disco stuff. And I remember being at summer camp where we could only sing camp songs. And my friend being okay, there's this song and you're going to hear it when you get home. It's by this guy named Meatloaf and it's 10 minutes long, but it's on the radio because it's a whole story. And so there was that. But I had a really influential day, and actually Judy Collins knows about this, which is really awesome. I was home from school and I was, alone in the house, and I was 16 or 17, and I decided to pull out, I think it was either Wildflowers or Whales and Nightingales. I think it was, and I, her album, and my parents had, listened to all this, and we would do puzzles together, in that space with that music. But I listened to the lyrics and it blew my mind how what I know now is a fact. Those folks in the late 60s, they really believed that what they were singing about was life or death.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the anti-war movement. It was an embrace of a whole new way of being and thinking, and they were really young, and they were at the vanguard of setting music to poetry and bringing all these Pete Seeger songs to life and singing each other's songs and creating this kind of incredible community. I just thought, wow, how did they have that? How did they have that such a feeling that their music was so important? Because we thought that disco was awesome. We didn't think it was life or death, although it turned out to be in so many ways because it was so much the soundtrack for not just gay liberation movement, but also like a lot of Black, white, brown people dancing side by side to each other's rhythms.
Yeah.
There was a lot of coalescence around disco. So it actually was. But I just thought, wow, like these people take themselves really seriously and for good reason. I really felt the depth of what they were really going for with the folk rock movement in the late 60s when I heard that album. And I thought, gosh, if I could ever do that, I would be the luckiest person in the world. And then I went straight to theater for a long time, and only came back to music in my 20s.
Really? Oh, you went to theater?
I was like, yep, I'm going to be a theater major. I'm not going to take any music theory classes because I really want to focus on theater because I know that I'll never do music. And it was great. I was surrounded by one of my buddies in college is named Stephen Trask. He wrote the soundtrack for Hedwig,
Sure.
and who's huge John Lennon and Elton John fan. So it was always turning me on to sort of the B-side stuff of all of those musicians. And so music was everywhere.
So you're a fellow thespian.
Yeah. Yeah.
We saw the original. We were living in New York at the time. We saw that original Hedwig when we went at its location down in I think it was in the West Village.
Yeah. Was it like Jane Street, the Jane Street Theater?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That was early.
Yeah, that was like mid 90s. Anyway. Okay, so I want to start asking you about a few. So the first one I'll start with is one of your favorite albums you put down, which is Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. by Simon and Garfunkel. I don't know that album as well as like the others. I can picture the other two that I have, but not that one. So how did that come to you? Do you remember when that first came into your life?
I don't know why that one did, and it is kind of magic. I think it's really their folkiest. I think it's got Go Tell It on the Mountain. Something called Benedictus. So I had that on a cassette and I would just listen to it in my car. And I was a religion major, and the professor who I was going to work with said, "What do you think led you to be a religion major?" And I said, "I think it's Paul Simon." Because he was always interested in these sort of themes of sort of where we bring a really kind of everyday alienation, just like I live in the suburbs, not the city kind of thing, and bring a sort of a spiritual quest to it. And, that was perfect so Benedictus is just this beautiful 2 voices and a cello, like ancient, like what would be a madrigal or something like that, but just 2 voices. And they had religious songs, they had spirituals, they had all these different things that sort of were their exploration. And because I was a kid from the suburbs, I could understand that intense curiosity, that aura coming out of New York City, that sense of, sort of a subterranean culture of people searching for something.
Yeah.
That had this kind of religious cast. It's very present on that album, and it just has a real a real extra layer to it. So I think that's why I loved it so much. It really hit me deeply.
Wow. I think the only thing on there I knew was Sound of Silence.
Yeah. Like to the neon gods they made. The people bowed and prayed to the neon gods they made. I mean, if you're 15 and you hear that, you're like, absolutely. Like when you're sort of seeing the sort of weirdly misassigned, spirituality of consumerism, and you're like, there's something really wrong here.
Yeah.
And it's the sounds of silence, it's something menacing that you hear in the silence more than the words. I respected him so much, both so much for that kind of, that narrative. It was really consistent in that album.
Yeah. Well, how about kind of along the lines of that time period? Never bought an album is Judy Collins. So you mentioned Whales and Nightingales.
All of the Judy Collins stuff came to us, before, when I was born. I mean, it was already there before I came along. Her first albums, and then as I came along, she was, she had a songbook, and Judy and Joan Baez also had a songbook that was kind of autobiographical as well, like a memoir and songbook in one. And there was this kind of way that you loved her as much as the music, and you're just like, this is Leonard and I, Leonard Cohen, this Leonard and I on the Aegean Sea, and Stacy Keach and I when we did Shakespeare in the Park. There was just such a beautiful aura about Judy, and I got to know her, and she's got it going on. I mean, I just love her, and so we had sort of the spirit of Judy Collins, and like whatever they were doing to sort of make us all fall in love with her as well as her music was very present in my house. And, we were three sisters, and my sister would pull out her guitar and play along with her long blonde hair. And I think she was really, going for it. She sang songs by Jacques Brel. She has a song that's set to the soundtrack of Wales. It's like she sings Farewell to Terwathi, which is like a sort of a sea shanty thing, but over the Wales. She sings a song in French. She sings a song in Flemish. She wrote her own songs. She was exploring the world through music and was all different kinds of songs about our humanity. It was a way of being in the world. That's what Judy Collins and Joan Baez as well were in our household. And, Joan had an album called David's Album that she wrote when her husband went to jail. And she, the back of the album is like, David's in jail because he protested the war. And, we were with her for all of that. And that album also has a lot of deep explorations on it, just real step outs into what quote unquote folk music could be.
One of the pump up songs you put, which is Born to Be Alive, it says Patrick Hernandez. Is that
Hernandez,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You haven't heard that song?
Never heard that song before.
Like, da, 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 da. We were born to be alive.
Well, I listened to it and I was like, oh my God, this has got to be the song. Because there's one song by an artist in 2024, Bea or something.
You know what's amazing? I taught a class about music and social movements, and I learned a lot more than I'd even bargained for in a really good way. And I came across this article by a Village Voice columnist, and I think his last name was Smucker. But anyway, I'm embarrassed to say I don't know his name because it was so awesome. And he said it was an incredible time, as I said earlier, to be out in the streets. You had this disco music that got everybody off their couches and into the discotheque, and we associated with a lot of sex and drugs, and there were, but I call drugs the artificial fertilizer, like the inorganic fertilizer of all of these music movements. Like it was a little too much, but the music itself as a nutrient of culture and of progressive culture, of progress, was unbelievable. So, we associate a lot of sex and drugs with disco, but the music itself, the propulsive, diverse, all of those rhythms, multiculturalism coming into that music were a cultural force. So that song, and then we have this epidemic that comes along with the AIDS epidemic, and you have all of these songs about, real gay anthems like YMCA. Like YMCA in a kind of is saying, come to the YMCA, and you think, oh, come to the YMCA because it's like everyone's checking each other out and there's probably a lot of places where you can have sex and all that stuff. But actually, if you listen to it, you can also hear it as an invitation for young men to come out of the closet. Like there's a place you can go to find your people, and in a celebratory sense, and so Born to Be Alive, we were born to celebrate being alive, and in all of its forms and all of its multicultural cool forms. And then of course it becomes even more of an anthem in the early 80s when we're fighting this terrible disease. So I kind of put it in its cultural context as well as it being a pump-up song because it says, we were born to be alive, born to be alive.
Oh, here's another one that took me. I mean, I kind of knew because of the documentary I watched on them, but I listened to some of it, and it's one of your favorite sadness songs you put, which is New York Mining Disaster 1941, which it's from the 1967 album Bee Gees First. How did that song come to you?
My dad played it for me, and he started to cry.
Really?
He would also cry when he would play The Times They Are Changing by Bob Dylan. And he said, we went in 1968 to this convention, and I assumed that it was Bob Dylan playing The Times They Are Changing. He talks about it and he gets so emotional. It was like some guy singing it at, the Westchester Convention Center for some, political thing in 1968. But I think actually the thing about that song that's so sad is that it's like he's, well, this from acting, he's sort of playing it from the side. He's not hitting you straight on saying this is sad. He's saying, have you seen my wife, Mr. Jones? It's just like, there's something, it's very melancholy. And at the same time, there's these pieces of it where he's not just telling you to feel sad. He's describing something and you're sort of seeing him steeped in this moment of this mortal and no escape moment. And it kills you.
So I'm going to do an album and a love song, and you can pick one or both if you want. One is the album. I know the artist, but I knew Solitude Standing by Suzanne Vega. But you put down 99.9 Fahrenheit by Suzanne
Yeah.
Vega. And then the other would be a love song, I Think We're Alone Now. Because I'm curious about that because I knew that song when I was growing up. I'm 54, and I
Mhm.
knew the Tiffany version first.
Okay. Yeah.
So either of those, can you speak to either of those or both of them and when they came into your life?
Well, I remember I was like 4 or 5. I think We're Alone Now was something that we would dance to, at our dance parties. So that was on a 45. I think it was like a white and yellow design on it. But there was something so, all my neighbors were boys. I was one of 3 girls, but and I loved the boys. And so it was always, it's like, oh, here they are, and so that was kind of always in the mix, like, boys. And then I think We're Alone Now had a kind of what's amazing is that moment that a child is not really, thinking about anything sexual whatsoever, but romance.
Yeah.
Like, there's just that moment where you understand romance before you even have any sense of what it physically uh, how it's assembled physically. It's just that sense of romance, and I think and Here, There, and Everywhere by the Beatles was another one that just was that sense of romance without anything attached to it, but like many things, like crying, like laughter, there's a kind of a dimension to it, a dimension of being alive to a feeling of romance, and I just loved that in, I Think We're Alone Now. So so I'm very grateful to that because, of course, then when you're 12 and 13 and you understand all the physical components, there's so much horrible, everything from getting your braces locked in somebody else's braces to just, like, the weirdness of it, that, like, you're a teenager. Yeah, I'm a little older than you. Like, you're a teenager and you're like experiencing all of these thoughts about sexuality, romance, and then come all of those devil movies about, where a friend pointed out, it's like the moment that the girls started to have like agency, volition, sexuality, boom, possessed by the devil. So but that sense of just romance apart from everything was really I think is just important to the human experience, and I can still access that, I can leapfrog backwards to that feeling now and, you know, understand how wonderful romance is just from those feelings. And then the Suzanne album, I heard that what I loved was that it was a real jump for her, and, it was sort of like coming from my theater background to hear these songs that were so uniquely hers, but put into these theatrical settings. There's a boy in the belfry, he's crazy, he's throwing himself down. But it's like all of this really interesting. It was Mitchell Froom was the producer, and she was married to him briefly, and he created these settings for her songs that I felt it was like hearing her say, this is, Solitude Standing in her original one. It was kind of like, there's this other part of me that you get to see. Like, it's sort of like I went to the costume chests and I put on something, and lo and behold, this is as much me as the other stuff that I put out. And
Right.
it let her sort of expand. And I just got to hear like all of these different parts of this person based on sort of how she was produced. I don't know, it just opened up my brain, kind of the way when I was younger, Sergeant Pepper's did, for me and for everybody else.
Yeah.
But 99.9 was really, it just showed me the possibilities.
Okay, the last thing I want to ask, it's kind of three together, and I love that you put all three of these in obscure songs because all of them have a certain place in my heart, which is Endless Love, Jesse's Girl, and Against All Odds. Different things, but all the same. Like Endless Love and Jesse's Girl were both from 1981, and Against All
Mhm.
Odds was from 1984.
I will say we were in the tour van on this latest tour, and I was with Seth Gleer, who is a really brilliant musician and singer-songwriter in his own right, but he was in my band, quote unquote, my trio. And we turned on Against All Odds in the van, and because I was like, that song, and we were both belting it, almost to the point of my feeling a little embarrassed. Like I could tell that they could kind of see the hairbrush in my hand, singing in front of the mirror. But you know what? Yeah,
Oh,
that was like it for him. And then we were talking about what our karaoke favorites would be. And I was like, and we said at the same time, Endless Love. And I think it's maybe the magic of all of those three songs is that you can sing along with them. Kind of like Donna Summer. She's not a soprano, so you can you can belt along with them and kind of feel like, they're your friends. And
yeah.
then you have to check yourself,
Oh,
make sure that you know that you're not their friend. But it's all of those songs are so, again, kind of romantic but and so melodic. And yeah, they really went for it with the big sound.
yeah.
And I know that it's Phil Collins, Against All Odds. That song is enormous. It aims to be like an enormous ballad, and it is, it's completely unbound and passionate. I love that. And Endless Love too.
I have the same thing. I think it's Phil Collins. The one that's you have no right to ask
Oh
me
yes,
how I
as we
feel.
feel. Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah,
have.
I know the female part. You have no
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, there are those power ballads of the early 80s are, unabashed. And
yeah.
I mean, I was 83, 84. That's when I was going to the brunt of all of those Sweet 16 parties. So, I mean,
Uh,
and the cologne, it's just like the music, the olfactory element, the everything about it, was those, black and silver and gold balloons because it was the 80s, like
oh
the
my
whole nine
God.
yards was very, that was really heady to be around so much of that that boldness, yeah.
Olfactory. That's so for me, all the Drakkar Noir and Obsession for
Yeah.
me, like in the 80s, those smells just kind of release.
It was so, and it was like the shyest boys with the loudest cologne. They were like, "Okay, this will compensate." I mean, how wonderful that my kids went and go to a very small public school. And, I realized at college, like whatever kind of traumatized me in college, I look back and realize that almost always came from kids who'd gone to very exclusive private schools in New York City. They kind of just knew how to get under your skin and how to speak a language underneath the language. Whereas at my school, it was kind of like, here I am.
Yeah,
And my kids go to a place like that. So when we thought we were being very, very bad and very naughty and very terrible, we weren't, we went, we would, everyone would go to party in the woods at this place that was like just, I don't know, kind of a falling apart platform. I don't even know what it was. And the place was nothing.
yeah.
And, and yet it was so naughty,
Ours was in the
and
woods. It was called The Circle. I don't know why.
yeah, ours was called The Hut, and when I sang at my old high school, like, 10 years later, I said, "We live just outside of New York City. Why you can be a bad kid by spending $5 and getting on the Metro North train and going to hear jazz without anyone knowing. You don't just have to go to Wampus, which is Wampus Pond, to the parking lot of Wampus." And this kid came up to me after the concert and like, "Thanks for blowing our cover." I was like, "Wait a minute. You guys
Uh,
are still going back to this," it's like,
wow.
what kind of legend has formed around absolutely nothing? It was so wonderful because you could be on that edge, your
Yeah,
parents didn't know, and you could do all of that, I don't know, that stuff that felt like it was on the edge. It was very
yes.
novel. It was very, and yet it wasn't.
Yeah. So that's where I found everybody's like, you can play the Beatles backwards. And, like, it'll say Paul is dead. I'm like, "What the what?" It's just, like, so
Yeah, yeah, there is a lot of that, the song "Roller Coaster." They're like, they have a sound effect of a roller coaster, but it's of a person who actually died. And yeah, there was always, like, the story under this.
Yeah,
Actually, I wrote a song with Jill Sobule called FM Radio, and it was a celebration of how we would get so caught up. Like, it was like talking disco with my orthodontist, like I don't know. That was kind of the equalizer of young and old,
Oh,
of,
yeah.
my orthodontist with his perm, talking to him about disco and like we did have this sense like, so what is going on in Jackson Brown's life?
Yeah.
And it had less of a salacious, scandalous
Yeah.
thing.
Dar, that's it. Thank you so much for taking time.
Thank you so much. I will see you again, I'm sure.